to kick off with a few words, and that is that, first of all, this is totally new to me, and I'm grateful to Paul and Peter for setting this up enormously, and even more grateful for you all turning up to do what you can to make this all work as well. I'm pretty excited about it, if nervous, but here we go. The first thing I think I want to talk about is, and I'll kick off with this straight away, Paul. I think we'll go straight into the assertion that we have some idea what most of you want to talk about, but I'd like to go into the assertion that basically, as Peter was saying a while ago, if you can build one of these, you can build any of them. There's just more of the same. And essentially, the great catamaran designer, I think John Marple said that this form of construction is actually a form of liquid welding, and it is. And if you look at it like that, unlike what Bruce did in the original plans, where he showed you the nails and screws you should use and stuff like that, we don't use nails and screws except to hold the thing together while the glue sets and then chuck them away, or leave them there. And our friend Michael Jansen, who was enormously helpful to me over many years, sailing Charlie Fisher in the very first days, and working on Paul's boat in the very first days, then in Geelong, working for Ford and all sorts of other people as an engineer. He brought the brains to all of this. But he also made 5 videos, and they're astonishing. What they are is the segments of the build of all of the boats, from the 18-footer, the 23-footer, the 26-footer, the 29-footer, the 35, and the 43. And just to make the point, we're going to kick off with the 18-footer.
Yeah.
And then we'll go straight to the 43, and you'll think it's almost the same boat. No, you won't, but it'll be interesting.
So which one is the one on the right?
On the left.
Okay.
And people can still talk through this, can't they?
Yeah.
So here we have the 18. The only difference between the others, it's got an offset centerboard, and you can see it there very clearly. You've seen the frames go together there to begin with. And then he turns around, and you'll see all the bulkheads that you set up earlier.
Sorry, Robert, we're just seeing all the individual photos. Are you able to?
You're not sharing that. Oh, sorry.
We're only seeing the whole collection of photos.
Oh, excellent. Okay, let me sort that out. Sorry, I didn't.
Thumbnails. We're only seeing the thumbnails.
Let's do that again.
That's all right.
Let's do that again.
Thank you, team. That's an excellent.
That's what we got.
Have you got it now?
Yeah.
Well, let's just roll back from the first spot.
A big tip of the hat to Michael Jansen collectively, please. He died a few months ago. Too young. You can imagine all those panels being welded together with fillets around the corners, the edges. The rudder box might interest some of you.
But this is the 18, yeah?
The 18, yeah.
So they're 6-foot dummy models, aren't they?
Yeah.
People dummies, not the boat dummies.
So shall we open the second one up, Robert?
Do you want to see it again, or do you want to go straight to the 43?
43 would be fine.
Okay.
So sorry, we'll have to do this roundabout way while I launch.
Good on you, Phil. Nice to see you.
I can see you too, likewise.
Okay, here we go. I got it right this time.
Can you see it all now, folks?
Yep.
43 has a few more bulkheads, as you can see.
Isn't a bulkhead a thing that you get when you drink too much port?
Only you would say that, Paul.
Well, someone laughed.
Drinking wine in bulk, perhaps.
Now that one's got the twin rudders. We're an option on that. We can talk about that later at some other stage when we talk about rudders. And Michael did a lot of work about planning and engineering for electric drive in that one.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get a chance to talk about propulsion, because that was definitely one of the things people wanted to talk about.
And all of the dimensions in there for the bunks and stuff like that, they're all 2 meters rather than 1800, on the assumption that there are a lot of basketball players out there.
Dutch basketball players.
Yeah. And that boat you can walk around in the wet area, as they call it on a boat, but a shower, toilet, that sort of thing, is almost Trumpian in its dimensions. I mean, in reference to his bloody awful buildings. Sorry. And the tabernacles are there too. The mainmast is such that in the tabernacle, when it's folded down, it will spear boarders chasing up behind.
All right, so we'll stop the sharing of that. We'll go back to the main. So, how do you want to start off? What do you want?
We kick off with little acknowledgement right at the start.
Yep. And we've got no one else wanting to come in the group, so yeah, let's go. Would you like to look at some more still photographs?
Yeah, still photographs.
Okay, let's do that.
Sorry, Rob, just quickly while we've seen it, Ben just was asking, are there any of the modern, like the freestanding cat catch 43s yet?
No. And the one with the standing rig has quietly been sold. I've got to find out more about it. I know the guy slightly, and I knew the builder fairly well too.
So do you want to start?
Just start off with at the start. I need to do a bit of a tip of the hat here. That's Bruce, and his hair was as unruly as mine. I should have worn a cap tonight, but he became a most incredibly quickly unlikely friend, and unlikely because of the world he moved in, unlikely because of the world I moved in, and we became. It was a miracle, actually. We just became really close really quickly. And we stayed at his house 3 or 4 times, and it was a wonderful conversation over 40 years, and I valued every minute of it. A great friend, and he loved what we're doing down here in Australia with the boats. He really did. And he said, you can have the business, Robert. He said, I'll stick to making money on my business. And he also said on his plans, I don't know if anybody got the originals, we are not set up to handle queries from people building the boat. Basically tick off,
Yeah.
And he said, I'm very glad you're doing it. And so that became a sort of standing joke. But there were many wonderful adventures, including 3 tours we did of America with unsuspecting Australians who believed I could run tours, and fortunately no one died, and we had a fantastic time, and he helped make it so.
Should we go to the next photo?
Yeah, go to the next one straight up. And that is I'm actually in this photograph, but that's Bruce's back, and that's Margot, his wife, in the front, and that's the very first time I ever saw a Norfolk Island Sharpie or any Sharpie sailing, and it was on Long Island Sound in the middle of the afternoon. The wonderful New Jersey smog, it moves up, and like in Bangkok, you get a wonderful sunset with all the pollution. It's fantastic. Lot to be said for pollution. But anyway, he cast me adrift in the dinghy, and that was the first photograph I ever took of a Norfolk Island Sharpie.
So that's a 26?
That's a 26, yeah.
Yeah. And with a vertical lift motor well and all that?
The vertical lift motor well, and the bloody awful single steel plate centerboard, and all of that stuff.
And a head right in the bow.
Head right in the bow. And I mean, it's not a bad idea that in a way, but not if you want a double berth up there, it gets a bit untidy. And
You
but
don't sleep with your.
well, enough of that, Paul. You're misbehaving and terribly. But it was enough to convince me that this was the boat that I wanted to be involved with, and that's been the case for 40 years now. And that's a photograph taken by Margot, who's a bloody good photographer, and it's Bruce sailing on Long Island Sound a couple of years before that.
A bit of a breeze.
A bit of a breeze, that's right. These two guys here are two guys who early on, the one on the left drove me mad, and I loved him at the same time, because anytime I had an idea, he said, "Oh, I'll have one of those," and he did. And the result was we were able to trial things to breaking point. They didn't break, but we tried to break them. He said, "I've got good insurance. We'll just keep trying." And we couldn't break them. And that was the tabernacles and the first carbon fibre masts. And we'll see, that's him on the left. And the other one is Laurie Evans, who bought the first of the big kits. He bought the first 26 kit. And he did an absolutely masterful job of building that boat. It was just fantastic. And unfortunately died not long after he turned it up the right way. And he knew he had limited time, but it ended too quickly. And a big tip of the hat to him too. I miss him terribly. I miss them both terribly, actually. It's another whole story. And this one hasn't departed the scene yet. That's Paul, the second from the right.
Without a beard.
Without a beard, yes, right. And with his kids and one of my grandkids out sailing on Charlie Fisher one day, just to illustrate the boats can be fun for family too, as well as our serious turkeys. And that gets you into the building. And you'll probably reflect on this from what you saw on those movie clips. It's the 23, and I think that was, I can't remember whose, but it might have been Mal. Is that yours, Mal?
Yes, it is.
It is. I recognise the floor.
Yeah, well, I only recognised it from the centreboard hoisting arrangement. Yeah.
Yeah. That was Mal Garney built it.
No sign of red.
No, I don't know, red came later. Actually, there is. If you look right there.
Yeah,
Oh, you can. The whole side.
Yeah. Yeah. And you'll see the size of the centreboard case. Now, just to go back onto Bruce's boat, one of those tours I ran, I did 3 trips where we took about 16 or 17 people mostly from Australia. They just joined this trip and believed I could do it. And astonished me, actually, and astonished my wife even more. She was really worried. But anyway, we did these 16 or 17 day trips to the United States on both coasts and stuff. And we were in Charleston, I think it was. Anyway, wherever it was on in the south, and Bruce's boat had been sold, and the guy that had it said, "Look, I'd like to take your tour group out sailing on the Chesapeake. They really ought to experience." And I thought, that's great. Towards the end, we got into hellishing strife because he hit a sandbar somehow and bent the centreboard, which meant that he couldn't withdraw it. And the problems that created were just horrible. And the boat, by then, Charlie Fisher had been running for a while then. I realised that we could do much better than he could. And I knew that the good 26s here could too as well. And we never had the trouble with bending boards. That's the critical thing there.
Next.
Yeah, you go to the next one. Just wanted to chuck that in. One of the reasons for the slightly radius bottom, which all of the boats now have, is that Bruce said right at the start, that I built this one, designed the flat bottom one to be whacked together, but he said, I really wish I'd put a slight radius in it, as Commodore Munro did with the subsequent boats to Egret. He put a slightly radius bottom as well. And Bruce's point was, you will be faster. And he's pretty determined about that. And slightly heeled, you probably go to windward better too. But I saw one more thing. I'd seen people trying to heave around sheets of 12mm ply, and Bruce agreed that the 12mm was too thin for the bottom of the boats up to the 26. His own boat was 12mm thick, and he said it did interest him that he had that little protection. And so we doubled that right at the start, because I knew we were going to bump the bottom in Lake Alexandrina and stuff with corals and whatnot. And we didn't want boats sinking, because that's not good for anybody. And and trying to laminate them was the big problem. Heaving that ply around and making sure you had no air bubbles in the middle was a real problem. Whereas when you're putting on strips like you're putting on there, you can stop at any time of the day. You don't have to keep going, and you can get 100% bond. And that means you've got an easier job. As I said, slightly counterintuitively, it's easier to do, and it's actually stronger in the long run. And so it's proven to be a doddle. You didn't have any trouble with it, Mal, did you? You went
Not at all. I thought it was a fantastic design. It's so strong. Oh, mine was the first of the round bottoms, I think.
I think it
And,
was.
by the time
Your
I
wife
put
said that too, I think.
by the time I put that third layer on, it was so easy to put in, and messy because there's a lot of epoxy. But then I used a lot, but incredibly strong. And it's 12 years old now.
And there's an argument for using cheaper. There's some cheaper imported plywoods out there that.
No, you didn't sell those to me.
No, of course I didn't, Al. I was still learning then. But now you'd be happy you contributed to my retirement fund, which could be happening tomorrow morning. But anyway, you can get this cheap plywood, which is really heavy, really dense, and you can obviously it's weight in the right place, so you're saving ballast in a way. It works. It's worked out very well, and now the whole range does it, and it's good.
All right.
I just for those that haven't seen the centre boards we use in Australia, that's pretty typical of what most people are doing. That one, I'm not sure who. That might have been my old board actually.
That's in 27 Hack Street.
It is too. Yeah, that's one I made. Yes, yeah, there you are. That was Charlie Fisher's board, and those days the copper boat anti-foul, which is essentially copper particles suspended in a particular form of boat coats epoxy. They put colours in it, which was really stupid because if it's working properly, it goes green anyway. So what the, so anyway, that was my first board, and it served me very well, and the boat had a lot of success along the way.
And it really does help performance, doesn't it?
It definitely does. And there's some tricks about the trailing edge, which is one of the critical things on those things. And we can talk about that another time, maybe when we get into another session on design and that kind of stuff, because I'm interested in that. That's another centre board held up by Laurie Evans. And he's holding it that way because you can see he's used the same plywood. You can't see that, but I'm telling you this. He's made his blank for his 26, and he's had a centerpiece of plywood, which is about 6 mil. Then either side he put this thicker ply, which was the same manufacturer, and then started shaping according to the he's got a little template down there somewhere at the bottom lying on the floor. Use the templates, but you can check your progress side to side by the striations of the lamination to the plywood. If it looks the same on the other side, it's pretty sure it's going to be damn near right, in other words. And it worked out really well. He built a beautiful board there. Thanks, Paul.
Okay. Whoops, sorry. Zooming and not.
That's just tossed in because it's slightly interesting. It's let me see. I don't remember whose boat that was. That was Philippe Pataka's boat. Pretty sure.
It's DD, I think, the 18 DD.
Yes, DD. Yeah, that's right. That's an 18, but it's still the same thing. You've got your Kilson down the middle, and you've got he's got laminated beams for the bottoms of the curves of the bulkheads.
Clamp.
Yeah, but what's really important, he's got running around the perimeter of the boat.
I think you can see the mouse moving.
Can you see that, what Paul's doing there?
Yeah, that bit of timber on the side that's held by the clamp closest to camera.
Yeah. What that's doing, it's giving him an external fixing point so that he's not trying to fix to the very edge of the chine log, so he's not limited by that. And he didn't do it, but I can see the potential, and particularly when you do the cabin roof, because getting the cabin roof off to clean it up is a really important thing because it makes it really easy to do. You can work with gravity working your way, and you're doing the paint the right way around and all that. It's really good to fix to an external bit while you're setting all that stuff up.
Yeah.
And then you've got the potential of lifting it off, lying it on the floor and tidying it up, you know, in a comfortable way.
Yeah.
So, okay. That photograph's chucked in because you can see very clearly the early version of the drop kick rudder, which is the one thing that might get me past the pearly gates. So I've got a few things that are holding me back, but that might help. I beg your pardon, Paul. Wasn't that funny? And on top you can see the folded masts in their tabernacles, and those two things I'm especially pleased with. The tabernacles have made owning the boat really easy, and you've got an instant shed for the winter. You fold it down and it's like a, what do you call it, a king plank in a house. You just drop a tarp over the top, bing, you've got a shed and you can be in and out of the boat, but it's protected in the meantime. And that's been very satisfactory. Have you done anything like that, Paul, with your boat? You know, put it away for the winter and you leave the mast folded down?
Which Paul? This Paul?
Hey, Paul Daltrey, yeah.
Yeah, Paul Daltrey.
Yeah. Yes, we do. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's just so simple.
Useful trick, isn't it?
Absolutely brilliant. Yeah.
And by some weird thing, I didn't design it that way. It just turned out that way. If your sails have got the right slides and things in, and the track's reasonably strong, you do not even have to take the sail out of the track. That makes it stupid easy to fold it up and down. You don't have stuff lying all over the cabin top and all that. I love that part of it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And that's just a demonstration there. You can see on Peter Shipside's boat, that's a boat called Maid Marian. It's now in Victoria. He's got one of the aluminium tabernacles, and they all work. There's no problem there. But you can see the sail in the track. You see that, the front? It hasn't. You'd think it'd all scrunch up, and you'd think the battens would all break and all that. And I found out by very tired, I put it down. Thought, hell, I haven't taken the sails out of the track. Hang on, I'll wind it back up. Nothing happened. I'll do it again. So now we always do it, and it's a nice party trick, and it just saves a lot of messing around. It means you can go sailing quick.
There's another picture.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
That just shows some of the controls, that the early controls. I set the cleats and the guides back about 600 mils from the back of the cabin, because that gives you a fairly good flow to a winch. And sometimes you just do need a winch to pull things down if you get a minor jam or something, or up, particularly with the bigger boats. But those clam cleats are really good. They're no moving parts, and you can get a thing that goes on top, which makes it like a, you know, when you have a clutch on the big winches, you can push the clutch and the rope can run out free, which is a great advantage. With these, if they run out free, they're liable to catch, which is extremely annoying. And they've now got a little plastic thing that goes over the top. It's impossible to describe now, but I might have a picture of it later.
You want to draw it?
Too hard.
Okay.
Too hard, yeah. But it really, that's the interior of an 18.
You think that might be Tom's? Tom's just joined, I believe.
No,
No, it's not Tom.
it's Chicana.
Chicana,
is
it is too.
It's Chicana.
It is too. It is too. But anyway, that's a nice space. It's surprisingly good. It's a little boat, but gee, it's a really comfortable little space in there, and that little galley off to the side is one of those things that it just works, you know. Not for a big group, but it's good for two people, and it's a great little thing. That's the 23. That's my boat. Gloriously chaotic as ever, but it served me very well, and it was a lot of fun. It's just a lot of fun, very easy. And that's Angus and his 26, looking like Marlon Brando on an angry day.
With the butterfly tables and
the butterfly table, that's right. I don't know why I put this one in, but that's a boat that
it's an optical illusion.
it is.
What's happening down here? It looks like the centerboard's been
I can see
it's there. It's there.
That's the end of the centerboard case.
Yeah,
there it is.
I know. I found it earlier.
Now that was one where Bruce Kirby really did earn his chops. He rang me one day and he said, can you build a boat for my neighbour? I said, tick off. You know what else? He said, actually, I've seen the photographs. We do. So we put in a quote, which was far too little. And he said he's a member of the New York Yacht Club and all this stuff. And I thought, God, if we do this well, we could retire on this. This could be fantastic. We could have boats being ordered and shipped across the Pacific. And well, we did build one, and it shipped off to America. And while it was being shipped, we got a note from the owner saying, would you and one of your other builders like to come out and be part of the welcome into the New York Yacht Club? And I said, no, we're busy. And he said, no, come on. He said, so we did. And he paid for us and put us up, and we had an extraordinarily interesting time. And
so is that a 26?
that's an 23.
23.
And
It's skirts though, isn't it?
Beg pardon?
It's skirts though, isn't it?
It's scared, so.
that's my boat. Yeah.
Now,
Hang on.
Mick's boat. Mick's on the call. He's now the owner.
Well, Mick, congratulations. I think that boat's pretty good. There are some of the things that were put on, not by us, that I think are less good. But the hull is, I think it's the best hull we ever built. It was fantastic. I really like it. And
so is this a view if you're in the head and the bow? Is that
yeah,
what we're looking at?
Yeah, that's right. So up in the bow looking back. It's really good. And it was really kind of scary because the boat got lost. We arrived in America to see the boat and be part of this whole event. They said, it's lost. And it had gone off with main freight in a container. Hell of a job fitting it in. And they said, oh, look, we'll provide the carbon masts. And I said, okay, we can provide them here. He said, oh, no. Lars Bergstrom makes the carbon masts for us. All right. So anyway, we sent it off. And it did get lost for about 10 days. And so David and I wandered down to Florida and visited people there and came back. And the word had come out that it turned up in, they thought it was coming into New York, but it came into Annapolis instead. And a whole big puzzle. And so there's a great moment where we're taken down to a place called Stanford. I think it was Stanford Marina. And we get down there and everybody's there. That's anybody, like Peter Harkin was there and his family. And there are other people I knew from what I'd read in magazines that were heavies in the whole yachting scene and all of that stuff. And I felt my shoes went up to scratch and all of that. And David Wilson said, should we be here? And I said, I don't know. And then Bruce comes up and he said, listen, you two convicts. He always called us convicts because we're from Australia and they had this idea about that. He said, there are two things that could happen today. And one of them is you could be dead. And they hadn't opened the container yet. And they opened the doors of the container and David and I pulled the two mattresses out that were stopping the boat banging on the side. And we lay down thinking we're dead. And they were in there for about 40 minutes. And they came out and Bruce said, first thing he said, you're not dead. He said, in fact, my mate here wants you to build another boat for him. And so the boat was pulled out and then we had to tow it down to wherever the hell it was down the road. And you went out on the exit, onto exit 12 and all that, which is what Bruce's boat was called. And then we had to fit these masts. And they were bloody awful. It looked like, I don't know if you are old enough to remember feeding feeding emus with Anzac biscuits. Used to be a fun joke to do on Kangaroo Island. They had emus out of Flinders Chase. And give them Anzac biscuits. They had these ripples all down their throat, down their neck. And it was quite cute. Horrible, probably. But these masts look like that.
Oh,
they were actually
terrible. No, we've got some pictures coming up of some carbons, don't we?
Yeah, we do, but not these. Yeah, these are Australian.
Is that the first carbon?
That's the first carbon mast on the Norfolk Island Sharpie in the world, so far as I know, and that was on Angus's boat. Because everything we came up with, Angus was, oh, I'll have those. And then when the Tabernacles came out, oh, I'll have those, and so on. And he was the most wonderful client. And this was the day we were trying to break them, and he was doing everything he could, and I'd hopped off in the dinghy to see what might happen. But anyway, nothing went wrong, and that's a great thing. Except in Connecticut, these two masts had to be fitted. And the first thing was they gave David and I the track to put on it, and the track was stainless steel, which weighed a ton. What's the point? And guess what the fixing was? PK screws. What? That's what you've been given. Use them. All right. So we put them on, and we were not happy. And we were staying by then with the owner of the boat. We moved out of Bruce's house. He'd had enough of us, and we were staying with the owner of the boat. And all these heavies were coming up from New York the next day for this big welcome into the Norotan Club, which is the watery base of the New York Yacht Club. Anyway, I get up in the night and I go down to have a look and seeing how the boat's sitting there. I notice it's only become a cat boat. It's sitting on the mooring, now a cat boat.
Right.
And what had happened, the mizzen mast fell over during the night. It actually broke, which was really bad. So
now the tracks are fitted with glue, right?
Well, they're all fitted with Sikaflex now.
Sikaflex.
We don't use any metal fixings at all. Every indication was this is not pretty. And so that morning, I got up really early and I said to David, we're in deep shit here. We've got all these people coming up from New York. We cannot have a dead cat boat sort of going around, people pretending they like it. We've got to fix it somehow. So I remembered before I left Bruce's joint, I'd cased it pretty well, and he had a massive rake. It was about, the rake was about 16 feet long in the old days and reasonably thick. So we went around there and we found a saw and we cut the head off the rake. And we got packing tape so it snug it up into this bloody mast, and we shoved it up there and tied it up with packing tape. And he caught us. Bruce caught us cutting his bloody mast up and whatnot. And he said, "What the hell are you bastards doing?" And I said, "Well, what we're doing is we're trying to fix your American mast, which has fallen over at the mooring." He said, "That's not possible." I said, "It is. Come and have a look." He said, "I won't tell you what he said." He was cross. And so he said, "All these people are coming, they're going to see it." I said, "They won't. We can cover this." He said, "Can I trust you?" I said, "Because you can't trust me, we can do it." And so we actually fixed it. So we had grey gaffer tape and a black gaffer tape around it, and it looked for all the world like it should be there.
Yeah.
And fortunately, it was a very light day, and all these people came, and they all climbed over the boat, and they even sailed it, and it did not fall over. So, you know, that was kind of interesting. There was a point to that. Someone will remind me in a minute. I completely lost it.
Well, let's just skip through a few.
Okay. That's one of the first 26 builds we did it when I had Duck Flat all those years ago. And that's now in Western Australia, that boat. I think it's painted black now too. That's my own 23 with the...
So this is really illustrating the trailering.
Yeah.
And the trailer rig is interesting. I don't know how many people actually have one on a trailer, but the A-frame nature of the trailer and the lack of a back support often throws people.
Yes. Now, it's interesting that with fiberglass boats, they get soggy reasonably quickly, or they used to, relative to wood epoxy constructed boats. And the realization was that the ballast end's about here on the boat.
So
probably.
the back wheel of the trailer is where the ballast is.
Yeah,
right?
pretty much where the ballast ends. And beyond that, you don't need any support at all. In fact, it's a damn nuisance because it's going to be hanging lower than the back of the boat, and you go through a spoon drain, you drag the damn thing. And so less trailer, the boat becomes the trailer itself. You save yourself 100 or 2 kilos in the whole operation, and it works perfectly well.
And the coppers are okay with it?
Coppers are completely okay. Yeah, they are. And my experience with coppers in general, with trailers and boats, is that if you haven't got things dragging on the ground, they're not sparks flying out from underneath. It looks like someone's cared about it to some extent, at least in the way it's packed up and packed down. They don't want to know about it. They just leave you alone.
Yeah.
I've never ever been hauled over for a dodgy trailer, and sometimes I should have been, but we did it tidily, and that was enough.
Yeah.
So I'd make that point. This one's very significant because this woman here, her name is Ruth, and she worked in some sort of quango in Canberra, and bloody good dame. I really liked her. She bought a boat called Hobgoblin. There's that one there. For the chiropractor, and he did a good job for a chiropractor in Queensland had built, and she bought it off of him, and she got sick of trying to put that aluminium mast up and down by herself. And her husband didn't like sailing, and she did, and blah, blah, blah. And now that she called me and said, "Look, can you come and stay in our house for a week, and we'll put you up, but I need you to fit these here tabernacles you've got." I said, "Okay, done." So she was the second person to get them after Angus. And I went across there and we fitted the tabernacles in about 2 days and it was all set. Hardest thing's getting the old mast tubes out. It's a real pest. But anyway, we got them out. And
so you just got yours out of your boat. You took the old tubes out last weekend, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
So that was, and because they weren't metal, they were carbon. You couldn't shrink them, or
no, we couldn't hammer them in the same way. But it did work. I got them out all right. The multi-tool helps enormously. But anyhow, with these, we got them in, and I could see straight away she had ept. She was not inept, and she put the mast up and down in the backyard, and I thought, this is going to work. And so she said, we're going sailing tomorrow morning. I said, good. So we went around, and she had told her husband he could stay at home. So we went around to the sailing club on Lake Burley Griffin, and she had a sense of theatre, this lady, and we pulled up in the car park there, and there were about 15 gems. They're 18-foot plastic conventional class racing yacht. You know, they're really nice little boat, you know, but they're all being set up, and invariably the wife's at the front and she's got the forestay and the husband fiddling around with winches and stuff and pushing things up, and you could see there was tension. In fact, you could see that there was business for marital lawyers the following week, because the conversation was something like, I told you to hold that stay. What stay? I haven't got a stay. Yes, you've got the wire. You've got that wire there. And it descends after a bit of this where I don't want to go bloody sailing anyway. I hate you turkeys, and stomping away. And general grumpiness was attending the whole thing. And she picked this and I picked it too. And she said in a loud voice, she said, Robert, she said, I will rig the boat. Will you go over to the kiosk and get lunches? And you could see heads turn and look. And so I thought, I'll take my time, and I wandered over there, and I came back 15 minutes later and there was dead silence. There are people standing there with their jaws going, gawp. And I looked and couldn't see a boat or a car. But what I did see when I turned further, the bloody boat was already on the water with the sails up.
Mm.
and conversated like, how come we can't have a boat like that? So anyway, it was a bit of fun, and I'll never forget it. It was the first time it had been done in such a public way, and we did go sailing for the rest of the day. It was fantastic. And that one there is my own boat with a bunch of people on board coming into Brooklyn in New South Wales, and we'd folded the whole boat up at sea, so we had to come to the dock and went straight onto the trailer and home. That was it, which is what you can do. And that's just a detail of the back of the tabernacle and the mare's nest of things that have gotten more and more efficient over the time about getting your reefing lines and your outhaul and all the bits and pieces going back to the cabin. That picture there illustrates one of the things that people want to talk about. One of the first early experiences I had with my boat was, in fact, Michael Jansen is steering there. That's him there. Great picture of him, actually. Anyway, tip of the hat to you, Michael. And the very first serious race I went in was at the Wooden Boat Festival in Goulburn, I think the first or second one they ever had. And they had a bunch of quite hot, smaller racing boats up around 21, 22, 23 feet. And one of them was an Elliott 22. Now, Elliott 22s had then a hell of a reputation as really good hot boats. And this boat had a crew with uniforms, and they had shiny things all over it. And I don't even use a traveller, and I had the most elemental of winches. And but I did have good outhaul control and things like that. And I knew I had good stuff underneath. And when we came to sign on for the race, I followed these guys with their uniforms and things over to the guy who's in charge of the race, and they were signing on. And their leader said to me, oh, he said, you own that cute varnish boat. I said, oh, thank you, I do. He said, of course, it's shit. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, it won't go to windward. I said, really? He said, yeah. He said, ketches don't go to windward. I said, oh, right. And I deferred because he's clearly a man with a uniform and knew much more than I did. And then I signed on and went, and we got to the start, and I'm not very good at starts. I don't like breaking my boat. So I dawdled around a bit, got over the line, and politely dropped behind the guys in the Elliott. Now, the first mark was almost dead to windward, it seemed to me. And I'd politely sort of pulled my sheets in a bit and kind of crept up, and I realised I was going to make the mark. And I realised something else. He was not going to. And that was the beginning of a march. I couldn't find the photograph in time for tonight. There is an official photograph of the finish of that race. There's only one boat in it. There's a puff of smoke and my friggin' Sharpie. And at the end of it, my crew and I walked back to the official, who did all the signing on, because you had to sign off as well. And there's a blazing row going on there. And the blazing row is between one of the head of the uniform group saying that bloody boat should be disqualified. Or it should be seriously handicapped. Why is that? Because it goes to windward too well. And literally that. And the guy, because they're polite people here, I can't say what he actually said, but he told him to rhyming crow off. I heard what you said at the start.
Oh.
Yeah, and it was one of those sweet moments. And the reality is that in every race I went in after that, I realised that we had a seriously sneaky boat, if you think about the way it sails. And you've got to learn it a bit. And the biggest crime is not to is oversheeting. People pull their sheets in, they think because the boat's leaning, it's going faster. It's crap. They're not. And sail shape and playing with your outhaul. Give the boat, if you're going to windward in some conditions, give it a bit more belly. It'll lift. It's a wing. It'll lift. And I've used that. I've employed that technique lots of times. I don't have a traveller. I hate the things. For no other reason, when you go about and you're not thinking about it and you've got your bum on the traveller, it gives you a nasty bite when it goes through hard. And they're just another encumbrance to deal with. I rely on a very strong vang or an ability to control the vang, and you control the shape no matter where the boom is in relation to the boat, which you can't do with a vang.
With the traveller?
Can't do with a traveller, sorry. Yeah, that's right.
So the centreboard's got a lot to do with the windward performance as well?
Well, I've never sailed to windward without the centreboard, but yes, I think it does. And it's certainly...
Well, the centreboard, the foil shape.
The foil shape, I believe, does. I've no way of testing that because I've never had the boat. I've never sailed except with Bruce's boat. It didn't seem to go to windward wonderfully. It seemed to die off, but this boat never does. And the others in the other sizes, once they realise that... John? I heard someone say something in.
No, it's all good.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting. But that was that picture there. It was the first time I realised I was watching them sailing. I think they're all trying to go to windward. And what's happening? This boat's killing them. You can see there, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. I mean, that catamaran you wouldn't expect much of, but that's a pretty good dinghy over there, as I recall. And there are a heap of other boats that were very competent, very light air, and they were, I mean, Michael and Philip, wasn't it? Philip, the American guy, they just had a ball.
Mm. All right, so let's get to the next. Oops, sorry about this.
And tell me to shut up too if you feel like it. Oh, this is a very sweet
There's
moment.
2 photos of this, isn't there?
Yeah, go to the first one. Okay, this was one where for the first time I realised, that was the first time I really, over a big distance, let the sheet out more than the instinct told me to go. I felt like pulling it on because of my Protestant thinks you've got to be struggling and leaning hard for it to be any good. It's not true. You can, the trick is to get things where you're going to the point where the telltales are moving and then just ease off a bit. And suddenly it walks. It's just great. And the boat on the right-hand side there is a Ross 780. And highly regarded boat, far more sail area, all the bells and whistles. And again, some of the crew were in uniform. I like crews in uniform. It looks neat. And they were a hot boat. And this was later on in my career of doing this stuff. And I started well behind everybody. And this was about a 30-kilometre race. And this is about 10 kilometres into it. Now, I don't think you can load the pictures up so you can see the faces. But we crept up to these people, and as you can see, we just go open the picture up so you can see them a bit better. They're looking in disbelief, because here we are, we've got no squeaky gear at all. We've just got sheeting to a central point, and we've got a powerful vang, obviously. And I have to say, I don't consider myself a good racing sailor at all, other than I've learned a couple of things and about these boats. And they're horrified. They can't believe what's happening. Just move to the next picture, Paul.
Yeah. Oops, sorry.
This was only seconds later, and we'd eaten them, and we'd sailed over the top of them. You can see their sail area is much bigger. They've got a bloody great Genoa out there. You can see that. And they're devastated. And we've just gone steaming past. And they were tiny dots in the distance at the end of the race. And the conditions were everything, you know, running, reaching, and as in this case, going to windward. It was really, really interesting. Playing with the outhaul was pretty important, actually. That was one of the things that seems counterintuitive, because the boat looks like it's blunter into the wind. But
so Ben just asked, how powerful was your vang on the 23?
I had about, I think it was about 12 to 1.
Well, actually, I think the new owner of Charlie Fisher's in the room. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Hello there, welcome.
Well,
Hi there.
I hope she's treating you well.
It's needing a lot of work, actually. So it's I've pulled it out and it's sitting there waiting for me to get some time to put some work into it.
Did the other guy do any work on her at all?
No, there's it turned out to be a hell of a lot of work that needs to be done.
Really?
Hmm.
Well, I suppose boats are like houses. If they're not used, they go funny. Because he certainly didn't sail it much. I know that. So
Yeah, there's a number of things. Anyway, I'll let's move on.
yeah, and I'd be happy to talk about that sometime. But contact me and discuss it. I'll be really happy.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks.
Yeah, pleasure. Now this Paul. Where's Paul?
Hey.
That's your fantastic rocket there. I love that photograph. It's really good. I like that picture because, you know, it's pretty strong wind you're in by the look of it. Is that a radar?
Real score.
Is that a radar you've got up there on the mast?
That's radar reflector.
Whatever.
Reflector.
Yeah, so it bounces radar off of it. So it allows you to be more visible in a thorough.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah, it's going well. Now, because that's fairly strong wind, I thought I might include that one. That was on the way down to Tasmania, down to Hobart, and it was a bit breezy. And
What's the outboard hanging off the stern? That great big
it's
donk.
It was 2 horsepower, I think. 3 horsepower might have been.
Then that's on Charlie Fisher, right?
Yeah, it was on Charlie Fisher.
Yeah.
People always overpower them. They don't need it. They just don't need it. I never needed a larger outboard than that.
So you've also started messing with electric drives.
I have.
Thinking about it.
Please, you brought that in, Paul, because other people are talking about that too. If somehow I can sue someone who hits me with their car or something, I will tomorrow fit an electric pod underneath my 29.
So what do you mean? So you would, rather than having the outboard leg hanging down, you drop a little bottom pod out.
A retractable pod is the way I'd do it. And so you have a completely smooth underside when you pull it up. Then when you push it down, the Chinese ones seem to be by far the best. Torpedo people talk about, but I think they're junk. The Americans do too. The Americans, who are the most critical of all any product that comes out, particularly Chinese stuff, absolutely love the sea propulsion range that comes from China, and they have a lot of neat features. They don't have any mechanical bits within the motor, where the Torpedo does have geary bits and things like that, which are a pain, I think. And they also have a thing called sea charging, where if you're going over 4 knots and you wouldn't do it racing, but when you're cruising, it will recharge batteries to some extent. And that's getting interesting. And the Americans find that they seem to be unbustable. And they've had them in the United States, I think, now for about 8 or 9 years. And if you read any of the stuff on YouTube, the accolades are just right up there. I like rough water, and this boat here is a really interesting boat. It was built by a guy in the north of Tasmania. It's an interesting boat in that he hasn't pretended in any way to create a piece of furniture. It was extremely embarrassing, actually, because I was once mouthing off in front of Peter, ironmonger there. I think Peter was almost ill with nervousness of what I'd stuck my foot into. But I was telling people there at the Wooden Boat Festival about the roughest built Norfolk Island Sharpie in the world, and how you wouldn't stroke down the side of it because your hands would bleed within a minute from the screws pointing outwards. And it's not an exaggeration, it's true. And Peter and others were shuffling their feet, looking over my shoulder a bit, and I didn't read the room at all. And then finally I said, feeling some sense of I might be very embarrassed here, I said, but of course, the upside of this boat being so terrible is he said to me once, I'd rather be sailing than sanding. And there was a nervous laugh, and I turned around, there he was. That was the guy that built it and raised it. He said, you got that part right, Robert.
Now Keith has just popped up a question in the chat.
Yeah.
Can you run through any key insights or tips that you have about outhaul vang points of sail, as it sounds like you're saying it is counterintuitive to what would do on a standard sailing rig?
Well, I think because people have such faith, I can't really answer that question for sure. I can only say, well, Michael Storer once said something to me that was really good about many times actually, but one he said about sailing and racing, he said, if you're not doing too well, do something different. You'll be surprised how it works. And so there's some truth in that, because none of us know it all, and the wind and sails and all that are a contrary mixture of engineering, aeronautics, and theory, and fabric, and the day, and all of that stuff. And so I do believe in that. Alter something, and something will happen. If it doesn't, put it back, do something different. I can't be, what's the word, prescriptive, other than you get out there and play and see what happens. That's all I can say.
There was some point that I read about.
Go on, sorry. Please say it.
I was just going to say, Rob, I've seen, I don't know whether Mal wants to make any comments. He's certainly one who races his 23 a lot, and he does some pretty creative things in terms of his sail setting and so on. I know he plays a lot with the outhaul, having a very rounded main and things. Mal, do you have anything you want to say on that?
Thanks, Peter, for dobbing me in. Yeah, look, I think I'm surrounded by better sailors than I am, but I built the boat to when I first met Robert on his trip down to Tasmania. After I built my house down there, I then built the boat, and so it's now sort of 11 years old, and I've been sailing in Canberra. I built it to cruise, and I've never cruised it. I've only ever raced it, and I've raced it for 10 years. Every Sunday, and through winter every second Sunday. So I think I've done everything that's good and everything that's bad. I think the most important thing was getting a vang which was very strong and that worked, because I ripped so many vangs out. But once I got control of that and the outhaul, and I know Robert has criticised some of the photographs of my outhaul being all the way out and putting so much belly in the bloody sail. So he's a great critic, and I'm very grateful for that. But I have learned, I think the outhaul and the vang are absolutely everything. The battens have got to be shaped so that they're soft at the front and they're stiff at the back. You've got to have, well, I've got two carbon masts. I've broken them. I've broken the mainmast 2 years ago and the mizzen a year ago. Neither, I believe, was my fault, but I was caught in exceptional winds. But for a carbon mast to break, that's pretty severe. So yes, I've driven it hard, and the handicap of the Sharpie is pretty good. It's a 0.705. So alongside any of the modern boats, you can beat them all. You can beat them all. I'm sort of, I'd call myself in the middle of the pack, but my last 3 races, I've been sort of second, third, and second. So I'm pretty happy with it. But as Robert says, every day is different, and you just know when it's, the Sharpies just take off, and you can feel it in your bum. You just know when it's going, but sometimes you just wonder why it's not, you know.
Now,
and anything under about 6 or 7 knots, it's hard work, but you can still win a race at 6 knots of wind. It's good, great boat, absolutely amazing boat.
So how far with your main Mao would you ever get it over the gunnel, or would you generally run the main as tight as it would be over just over the gunnel? Is it that
just inside the gunnel generally? Yeah, yep. Just inside.
This is going to windward we're talking about now.
Yeah. But definitely let the outhaul out all the way as soon as you go downwind, or work the outhaul on a reach or a run, but have it all the way in when you're upwind.
So by working it, if it's choppy, you'd be giving it a bit more power by giving the sail more of an aerofoil shape. Is that what you're talking about?
I'm sorry.
So you're saying work the outhaul when you're...
Oh yeah. Keep it flat, because the battens give it the shape, but with the vang hard on and the outhaul out, your sail just looks absolutely amazing. It's a beautiful sail, and it's now 10 years old. I haven't replaced it.
Yeah.
Don't like those red sails. I love the white sail, the Egyptian cream, and what they call it.
Yeah. All right.
Now this one here is we're not stuck with just little boats. This is the biggest Norfolk Island Sharpie in the world. It's in what the hell is it? Ballina in New South Wales.
Other than the 43.
Yeah, that's the 43. Sorry, it's the 35. It's the biggest Norfolk Island Sharpie unstayed rigged boat in the world. And it's the 35, and it was built by a first-time builder up at Ballina, and he finished it off with only one arm working. It was a great story, actually, in many ways. He has done a mighty job of interpreting the boat, no question. He's astounded me, in fact. You can see the mizzen tabernacle there. It hadn't got the mast put up yet, and I went up there to help out because he had had a stroke and his left side wasn't functioning all that well, and I really liked him, and so bugger it, we jumped in the car and went up, and it was an amazing event for several reasons. One was the main mast is 43 feet long, I think, in the old money. It's a hellishing big mast. And when we got to the house, it was everything in the carbon stuff is engineer design. So it's not like the American stuff, guesswork that we experienced. And so were the tabernacles. And it doesn't mean to say that something might not, what can possibly go wrong, you think? I don't think like that. I think what probably will go wrong, and I panicked my way through it, and that's more or less how it was. Because when I got to his shed, I looked at the mast lying in the shed, and it looked like at the other end of it was Adelaide, so far away. And I thought, actually, I think I'm toast. And I leant on it, and it just lay there like a great massive object. And I thought of that boat, and I thought of the tabernacles. and I couldn't sleep. And I got up at about midnight and went out. And finally, I got a piece of pinus post and shoved it at about deck point, or a bit further along than deck point where the end of the tabernacle would be, and leaned on it. At that point, I weighed 195 kilos. At that point, the tip moved. I couldn't believe it. The tip moved. I thought, do you know what? We're going to be able to pull the thing up if you work it out. If it's 100 and whatever it was kilos, the winch will do it. So at about 4 o'clock that morning, by agreement, we hooked a trailer on the back of his ute, and we put the 43-foot mast on the ute and on the top of the trailer, and drove totally illegally with a lantern swinging off the back of the mast to the marina where the boat was moored. And when we got there, the marina is of the kind that you get in northern New South Wales and into Queensland, where there are a lot of mangroves. And there are a lot of boats, and the first thing you notice when you walk in is the smell of rot spores in your nose. And you also notice the denizens that are living on these boats are in a race with their boats to see who's going to die first. It has that look about it. But the denizens also love a good disaster, and they were intrigued by the fact your chain plates must be pretty thin. What do you mean? We can't see any. Yes, that's right. It doesn't have chain plates and it stands up by itself. Chatter, chatter, chatter. That's not possible. Anyway, they were kind enough in a mass to help Kel and I carry that bloody mainmast out onto the floppy floating wharf and lay it up on top of the two tabernacles. This is the mainmast. And I can tell you, I'm sort of unable to eat at this point. I'm just ashen with fear. And I had to put the fulcrum plate on the mast that goes into the tabernacle with packing tape. Now, I'm not frightened of packing tape because the Western world rides on packing tape. You wind enough, it's hellish and strong. And we couldn't judge where to put the skid plate on the bottom of the mast before we put it up permanently. And so we finally decided we were going to put it up with the packing tape on the fulcrum plate. And Kel sat there with his one arm, and I said, see if you can wind it, Kel. And he gave it a wind. He said, I bloody well can. And so 5 minutes later, the thing's standing there. And I could see this row of eyes like you see in crocodile jokes and things like that, looking over the tops of their boats, waiting for somebody to go horrifically wrong. And I'm looking back, desperate not to please them.
Yeah,
it was a nasty, nasty moment. And but we got all the plates sorted, and we located the fulcrum plate onto the mast with Sikaflex, and left it overnight. And we came back the next morning, and again the eyes were looking over the top, wondering what we're going to do next. And Kel said, Robert, I've stuffed up. I said, what's that? He said, I forgot to put the Windex on top of the mast. I said, what are you going to do about it, Kel? He said, I'm going to wind it down again. I said, excellent. So he backed round the rope around the winch, and with 2 fingers of his right hand, he was able to lower that bloody mast down. And we had to swing out with the boat to the end of the mast to put the tabernacle, to put the Windex back on. And then he wound it back up again. And as he was completing the wind, it was truly wonderful. The eyes disappeared from the row of boats that were looking at us. We heard this little tiny motor started, and my only great regret is I didn't have my camera with me. It was around the corner came this heavily overloaded tiny dinghy with 3 bottles of champagne and enough glasses for all of us. And these buggers climbed on the boat with tears in their eyes and said, that was wonderful.
gave them something to look at.
It gave them some food to look at, and It was such a thrill. You know, they were, I really loved them. The way they responded to the reality was just great. And roll on to the next picture. And the boat sails. There it is.
It doesn't look that big in that picture, does it?
It doesn't look that big, but you'll see in a minute what it's like inside.
So we got the inside. Oh, there it is.
We'll go there in a minute. Now, I've included this picture because he sent it to me the other day, very proud of the Dodger, the permanent Dodger he's put there. And I understand why he's done it, but I think it actually spoils it. Look at from the stern, it looks horrible. And I haven't put that picture in. I don't want to offend you.
He's not been judgmental in any way.
Not at all. Not at all. So anyway, and he took it out over the bar for the first time last week, by the way.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
And loving it. He's got a diesel engine in it. He's got a whole lot of interesting kit. I really admire him and his wife. She's brilliant. In fact, I was on the phone to him, and he was talking to me from Ballina about something he was trying to do, and I noticed a change in his voice while he was talking. Next thing I heard her jump onto her mobile to get an ambulance here now. No, I know what I'm talking about. Get an ambulance here now. The ambulance got there and he was having a stroke, and she bloody well saved him.
Wow.
Loved her.
Wonderful.
Loved her. What a woman. That's inside. That is a hell of a boat. You can walk around with a top hat on.
Yeah.
Abraham Lincoln. I'm going to say you would like that, Mal.
I would love it.
Anyway, and there's the Iron Maiden, the one that forced them to get the ambulance there and bloody well saved him. And the massive V berth up the front there, and the shower and toilet, all that sort of stuff. Yeah. I'm happy to use those terms. It's really good. And I've got many more photographs of it. It's just a great machine, and he loves it. He loves it. This picture is of great significance to me anyway. All of those lines there are Spectra stroke Dyneema. I don't know why anybody would use anything else. You could have, that's carbon booms on Charlie Fisher, which you would know about. Where are we? Gentleman Scott.
Yep.
Yeah. People have all kinds of stainless steel bits and pieces on their booms for the outhaul to slide back and forth on. It's crap. You just don't need it. A decently fitted ring of Dyneema will do the job perfectly well. And it's very easy to replace, and you're not busting the bank to do it.
So these are the one pull reefing lines, aren't they? Single line reefing.
No, I've gone back to 2-line reefing actually, Paul, because there's too much friction in it, I think. And I like to be able to control the two ends. Like you get the luff end down tight, and then you get the leech end down tight, but you can use the leech end as an outhaul.
Right.
Yeah, and that works really well.
Interesting.
And that's another detail of the trailer. By the way, these are not comprehensive, these photographs. They're merely to provoke curiosity.
Any questions or
whatever it might be. And that's Charlie Fisher coming onto the trailer there, and it's uncomplicated, really. It just works. And this is a bit of experimenting that's going on at the moment, and I'm trying to smash test these. You pay quite a lot of money for gudgeons and pintles, and this is, I think it's 12, is it? What did I use? 12?
I put it upside down, haven't I?
Yeah. I'm making wooden gudgeons and pintles. And the circle in the middle there is, this is a product placement thing. The Boat Coats e-glue. It's truly stunning product. You can use it for all kinds of stuff. People put all sorts of weird gudgeons in their centerboards and things like that, so they don't wear out the wood or let water get into the wood. It's a waste of time. Fill it up with thickened e-glue rather. Squeeze it in, let it cure, sand it off, and drill the hole. You'll never worry about it again. Water can't get to the wood, and it's just so durable.
So you've made up one of these already?
I've made up a set now and tried to smash test them, and I can't. I'm still going to go a bit thicker because I'm going to use them on my rudder box on my 29-footer.
So these sides here are going to be epoxied onto the rudder box.
Glued.
So this will be the rudder box, like externalized.
That's right.
And then have a pinhole here for the
pintle.
Yeah, to go
back of the boat.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'm really pleased. I've just chucked that in to sort of show you the bits and pieces of the pretty much standard rudder box now. That comes as a kit, as part of the kit, and we do have pretty much detailed drawings now of that as well. It's I can say it's brilliant without claiming to be clever, because there's nothing else like it in the world. We know that. I went to a patent lawyer and showed him. He said, "Oh, it's too simple." He said, "Someone's done it." I said, "Okay, do Europe." He did Europe. He said, "Oh," and there are all sorts of complicated things with whirring cogs and God knows what, but nothing like this. Nothing with only one moving part. And he said, "Well, shit, let's have a look at America." So we had a look at America. Nothing. Now, I've sold a few of them in America as built-up rudder boxes and rudder blades, and the people always write back and say, "That has completely changed my boat." And I did it in desperation because I'd done a few Derek Kelsall boats in the past, which you'd probably know of, Paul, and Jen, isn't it, Jen? Yeah. You'd know of the Derek Kelsall catamarans and that sort of thing. No? Paul, do you know Derek Kelsall at all? Yeah.
I know of them, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he was a really significant multi-hull designer, and he was the first to design boats that won major races that were the previous province only in wild weather and stuff of multi-hulls. I got to know him pretty well and sold quite a few of his boat plans here in Australia, and was involved in building some. And they had dagger blades where the blade rose up and down, but he had no means of a simple kickback or the ability to, from the cockpit, raise and lower the thing easily. And I had a boat show coming up, and I'd smashed a box that I had, and I thought, "Oh, I've got to do this quickly," and I just did it without really thinking about it much. And then at the end of it, I thought, actually, something's happened. This works. And we're able to pull it up and down quite easily. And if we hit something, the boat would stop, but nothing broke. There was only one shock cord. That's all it was. Yeah.
So I was just thinking, do we have any? No, we don't have any more. We did have some pictures of the rudder, but we're also getting to the point where technically we've got 15 minutes of it. Is that right, Peter Ironmonger? 15 minutes?
Peter's gone to sleep. Fair enough.
Yeah, we got 15. And what we were concerned about was that people had the chance to sort of, I know we've ran a survey, but it was a very even set of numbers as to what people wanted to talk about. So we thought we'd take the opportunity, and I'm just going to stop the screen sharing here, to go back to a discussion and where people might want to raise things or ask Robert direct questions, but also set up for what we might do next time if people are interested, and we can perhaps focus on particular areas or particular people's experiences or the like.
And I'm happy to take notes of that too, so we don't have to do it all now. But I mean, the first question is, do we try this again? And I've blathered on far too much, but I thought, okay, we get through this. I shut up, you start telling us stuff. That's what we need to do.
I have a question, actually, Rob.
Sorry?
Yes, Michael.
Look, just a bit of a back to the future one. You mentioned earlier about the horrific carbon masts on Scherzo. What happened to those? Are they still ones that are on it, or do they get replaced?
On whose boat?
Scherzo.
Scherzo. The mizzen mast was replaced. I'm pretty sure of that. The main mast, I don't know its subsequent history at all.
That's right. I'm just curious. I've had them down and done some repairs to them. So yeah, I was just curious where that was the original. So yeah.
It did have a weakness, did it? The main mast?
Oh, just wear and tear, and I was chewing up the halyards and had to replace all them. And but yeah, just they just worn, just wore patches. So I had to patch on a bit with some epoxy and yeah. But no, I was just curious.
Have you talked to Jeff Harriet, Mick, about that? Have you asked him?
Oh no, because that's when you mentioned before about your trip to America. That's the first I've heard of it, so I was curious, really. Yeah.
Well, I don't think the rake handle's still up the mizzen mast.
No, I didn't come across any duct tape or broom handle, so that's good news. Yeah. And also I've taken the head out, was enormous. So I call it a throne. It was like the throne room up forward. So it was just an enormous amount of space with this enormous toilet stuck in it.
Well, they were very wealthy people.
Yeah.
They're very nice people, actually.
You need a decent sized head.
Yeah. Well, it's replaced by a bucket now from that's right.
Well, some of my friends won't go with me if I have a bucket.
And if you have daughters, it's always a risk of being abandoned. So, anyone else got any?
Well, actually, I'm glad you raised that, because, quite frankly, we don't have to be all fussy and call them heads and things. The dunny and the space it's in is something that's worthy of careful consideration. The great thing about your 23, your scherzo, is there is room to make something which can be shut off from the rest of the boat, and people can feel secure in their security in it. And I think that comfort in that way actually plays out in safety as well. But that's another discussion. But I think it matters. It really does matter. And so, I mean, I've seen the porta potty is a simple, cheap thing that most people understand. It's not perfect, but people understand it from camping trips and God knows what. And it's ubiquitous, and you can get the parts and all of that, and they're cheap. That can be quite good. And so you don't have to teach someone to use it. You know, with some of the marine dunnies, you need a degree in dunniology to kind of operate the damn things, you know. And I don't like that. And you don't want to be in there explaining halfway through the performance either. But the ability to kind of get yourself tidy, if you like, without gymnastics is pretty important, I reckon. And I don't want to be a monk. I like people to come with me, and so I'm doing a major. The big fault with the 29 actually is it's got a bad dunny set up, and the 26 used to be too.
Yeah.
And the 26 now, with that in mind, and Paul's boat. If you come down to Adelaide, you'll see what Paul's doing with his. Now with the kits for it is now standard that we have a head that you can sit down in, and that you can be hidden from everybody else, and you know, wash your hands and do the whole lot in there, and come out without sort of making a drama of it, you know. So, and with the 23, I think if I was building a 23 again, I would bite the bullet and put the head right up in the bow as it was, with some form of definite privacy, not just a curtain, and ways of venting at the top too, which again make life easier. I would definitely do that, and I would use the fill-ins down the side of the centerboard case to create, if you wanted to, effectively double berths, which is what it can be.
Yeah, well, that's the setup. You've got those wooden cleats running each side of the centerboard.
Yeah.
Fly, which
Cool.
make that photo you showed earlier. They just slide underneath the mattresses out of use, and then the back cushions come down. So they're like small doubles of each side of the centerboard.
Small doubles is what they're like, and after all, it's a 23-foot boat after all.
It's a great, it's a really great setup actually.
I think it's.
Yeah, and it frees up forward. I mean, the head location wasn't a bad location. It was just the sheer size. It's the biggest head I've seen on a boat, you know, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of boats, you know. It was more of the sheer volume of space it took up. Which couldn't use for anything else, like a small fridge or anything else, but nothing else to be stored there.
You bought it or just recently?
Yeah. It's
Anyway,
I think in your
boat,
Mick, I think it's all plumbed in, isn't it? Too. It's not a porta potty. It's all fully plumbed in.
Had holding tanks, the whole kit and caboodle.
Yeah. So that takes up a lot of space.
It's slopping it.
There is a head that a friend who's building a 31 in Geraldton, in West Australia. I was tempted to look at this. It does have some plumbing, but very little. And it's called.
As the macerating head?
No, it's Aquavac or something like that. It's called Aquavac It's fairly expensive. It's about $700, which puts it out of my league a bit. But it's what happens is it looks like an ordinary marine toilet, except that on the top it has a sealing lid, and so that when the performance is complete, you put the lid on. You put a bit more water in this little pump that just goes in, and you put the lid on and start pumping on the outside. Now nothing happens, because the pump is actually creating a vacuum. You know how when you're in an aeroplane and you do, you go, and everything magically disappears. Well,
Yeah,
that's what this does.
Ben says it's a Lavac toilet.
Lavac, is it? Ben just
Thank you, Ben.
Ben, have you got one?
No, but I've been on a few boats that have had them. Very
they-
clever. Yeah, you just don't pump them and sit on them at the same time.
No, because apparently,
Unless you want to, Ben.
Good cure for constipation, I guess.
oh, yeah, you've upset me. I don't want to think about that. Frightening. But they work well.
Yeah, very simple.
Yeah, that's simple and work well is good news. Yeah, but just a price thing again for me. I'm tempted. Yep, sure.
Just a quick question on a very different subject. I don't know those who saw the post, but I bought my very first ever boat on the weekend, which is a 23-foot Sharpie. I think, Robert, you know it. You've probably been. That's the Tipsy 2 that we talked about. I think it's going on 30 years old.
Yes,
it's going to need a bit of, as I said, a bit of cleaning up on the top, sanding, but I'm looking forward to that. There's a lot of rust in the back of the trailer. And of course, I'm thinking I've got to take it off and go and get it fixed. And then I come on tonight and you don't have back of your trailer. It feels like a very nervous thing to do, to cut off the back of your trailer, but you're suggesting essentially that it's not actually doing a lot of work. And
David,
is there anything you'd add then to ensuring, I mean, it's being held on at the front by the winch?
It'll be held on the front by the winch with whatever you have, and probably it will have some sort of roller which will allow it to roll back regardless. So if you flatten it without the thing tied at the front, the boat's going to sit on the pave, regardless of whether it's a long or a short one, I would have thought. So what I suggest is send me an email later after this to remind me, and I'll try and have a think about it a bit more for you.
I'll take some photos, and I mean, it's very new to me, all of this. So
surely if the lead's covered, if the ballast is covered by the back axle or the axle, and you've got a neutral weight on the ball,
or 80 kilos you should have on the ball. 80 kilos.
A bit of a push on the ball, then you're probably in a good spot. If it's lifting, then perhaps because you don't want to put the load unsupported behind that pivot point.
That's right. But I'm just thinking, rather than go and get the whole thing, ground back, and which is not a problem. That's what I was going to do. Anyway, I'll talk to you about it. It'd be interesting. It looks really good to my eye, not having all that.
The boat looked good in the picture I think you sent me too. Look, take a shot from the side of the boat sitting on the trailer. I guess it is it?
Yep.
Yeah, I'll be able to judge that pretty quickly. I knew the build of that boat pretty well.
Yeah.
And I liked Ern a lot. Do you know what Ern's doing now?
No.
He's Nigel.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Look, hey, sorry to interrupt, but Keith has popped a question in here.
Yeah.
That I have to repair and reshape my keel.
Yeah.
Just a couple of quick questions. Do you want to go ahead, Keith?
So unbeknownst to me, my boat was in the water, but there was a little bit of damage to the keel in the centerboard case where I couldn't see. It's subsequently swollen, and I couldn't get it back into the centerboard case. So I had to drop it. It's out at the moment. So I've got to reshape it. I can see I need to reshape it on the scrape marks on the side of the anti-foul.
You may not need to. What I'd suggest you do is I recommend this to all of you actually. If you're thinking about sanding and doing stuff on boats, please use dust extraction, and please use good equipment. we all think that, particularly blokes, we think that we're tough, but it's horseshit. The stuff that wood survives because it kills insects. By definition, that's not good for us either. If people are like, I love the smell of sawdust. Horseshit, I don't. I mean, I like it, but I don't like breathing the stuff. I don't know what was used in your board. I've got a feeling it was Western red cedar, which is carcinogen central. I would be stripping the glass off, and I'd be using a decent sander to do that. I reckon the board's going to be a reasonable shape once it dries out.
Yeah.
And then go over it, and we can talk about trailing edges. Do not leave the trailing edge round. Make sure it's either sharply and acutely squared off at the edge.
Yeah, it is, but it isn't glassed over or anything. I know you can't glass over squared easily.
There's a trick for that, and I'll tell you about that too later.
Okay.
It's not that hard. I don't think you'll need to reshape it. I think if you get the glass off, and it's a pain in the ass to do, it'll take you a whole day. And you can do it with a belt sander if you're really careful. But again, dust extract like buggery, you know, and
belts are hard to dust extract.
Belts are hard to dust extract, and wear a mask. You know, please do.
I've got a Makita direct drive sander, so.
So you've got a random orbit sander?
Yeah, with a direct drive.
I wasn't going to, because they're costly, and I wasn't going to raise that, but do that with a 40 grit, and you'll go well.
So do you reckon it's dried back to its original shape? Because I was thinking I might have to shave off 4 or 5 mils on each side.
You probably won't.
No.
Probably won't. I'll give you an example. I remember once we used to build a lot of strip cedar canoes, Western red cedar strip canoes. I remember one guy built one and then left it for 5 years, 6 years in his roof in his shed, and he glassed the inside of it. And it looked like a twisted sand shoe. It kind of compound shrank. It didn't shrink on the outside where the glass was, but the inside at a different rate shrank. And it was just contorted. And he had it sitting up there for these years and hadn't looked at it. And he came to me in tears. He said this had happened. And I don't often get it right, but I said, why don't you put a bit of plastic over it? And this was just a pure and utter guess. And spray it with, those indoor plant sprayers with water. Mister, yeah. And cover it up and leave it. The bloody thing went back almost perfectly to shape. And then he did sand it back lightly on the inside and glass it, and he's still using the boat. So Western red cedar is funny stuff, and not funny because it's poisonous, but
I think when you made it, it's hard to tell, but underneath, but I can definitely see that there's vertical strips of different materials, and there's the tip is lead. So
it should be too. That's right.
Yeah, and the front of it has I think it might be Oregon. I'm not sure.
It probably would have. Yeah, if we put back then, that's how we built them. That's right. No, that should be right. But it should come good. And you can check it by getting a vernier and measuring the inside of the box, so you'll know what the width is. And then measure the current outside, and you'll probably find it's pretty snug. And that will fix it for you.
Okay. Yeah. So what was your and also as well is it was the original centerboard case that used to leak, and then there was a repair that was done. So it's got like on the centerboard bolt, what sealant did you use? Would you recommend to seal it? Because it's just got the metal plates on the outside of the box, and then the bolt that goes through. It doesn't seem to wouldn't leak, but just any sort of sealant is fine to do that.
That's always a tricky question. It's not one answer. I think Sikaflex is an amazing product, providing you've got good epoxy coating on the surface that you're attaching it to. Good epoxy surface, lightly sanded, and that you mark where you want to connect the two faces onto the, so it'll be a washer, say a big washer either side if you're using a bolt.
Yeah, it's just it's so you've got the plywood case box, and then you've got that were added and screwed into it. So essentially, two big custom made pieces of stainless steel on either side,
Like
and the
caps,
box
are they?
goes to the ones. Yeah,
Yeah,
and then
that'll work. But Sikaflex is the thing to use.
Mhm.
Certainly on the non-moving faces,
Mm.
I'd be putting the Sikaflex and set the screws into it as well. But make sure you put the appropriate primer on the stainless steel face and the appropriate primer on the epoxy surface.
Okay.
And I could advise you on that, but I can't off the top of my head. It makes a difference. Bunnings and that sell Sikaflex, but they don't ever have the primers there. And the reason for that is the primers go out of date quickly.
Yeah.
And you're better off to spend the money knowing you're going to chuck it away or something. And, you know, it doesn't last that long, the primer, but it makes a radical difference to the strength of the joint. And if you need to take it off later, even though it's so strongly attached, you can buy those little gas, you know, those little gas bottles they use in the very cheap gas stoves, you know, little camping stoves and stuff. Well, they have a little fitting that goes on the top of one of those that turns into a little horizontal Bunsen burner.
Okay.
They're really neat. They're a really good little flamethrower. And if you heat the stainless steel up to 150 to 200 degrees, you'll just take it off like that.
Okay.
But otherwise, you'll be leaving tire levers and it won't move. It's amazingly strong.
Now, I just wanted to say it's 5 or 6 past 7, which is our finish time. But we can stay chatting. There was no issues with that at all. But people might want to go. But it's also important at this stage too. If you want to have any topics that we do want to repeat this, please let us know.
Yeah.
Firstly, and secondly, if you want to pipe up and ask a question, now you're welcome to put it in the chat or just shout out, and we can keep talking. But we should say goodnight to those who need to go, and thank you for joining in.
And fantastic to see some of your faces at least. It's good to see you after all this time, Paul.
It's good to see you as well. It's still going well after over 20 years.
I beg your pardon? Yeah, well
that's still going well after over 20 years now.
And there's a whole conversation to have with you about that too. It really does interest me, your boat. They all interest me, that's the truth of it.
Sorry, may we just ask a question about the centre board?
Yeah.
It's just we've got quite a bit of sideways give in it. We just don't know what quite is normal, whether it's meant to have quite a bit of give or whether it should be a bit stiffer.
I'm not sure what you mean by give.
Slop, sort of, the centre board, sideways movement.
Oh.
In the
So it's a bit narrow for the case, is it?
Yes, seems to be.
Yeah.
Go on, Peter.
You can hear it.
Sorry?
You can hear it.
You can hear it knocking.
It's an opportunity then. Anyway, I'm sorry, that was a bad joke. This one I can do.
Is it a plate or a shaped foil?
How thick is it?
It's shaped. I think this is Philippe's old boat, Robert.
It's what, sorry?
It's wireless.
Wireless.
This
Yeah,
is
wireless.
wireless.
Thanks.
Wireless.
Thanks,
Philippe's
Peter.
old 29.
Wireless.
Okay,
Thanks,
I don't know what that. I mean, I was very involved with the building of it from a distance,
but it still should have a foil.
Yeah,
it's shaped. It's a shaped board. I think I've sailed on it with Philippe before, Robert, and I can remember the same thing when we were sailing. There was quite a bit of noise from the board.
Well, there are ways around that, and one of them is to drop the board out, which is a pain in the ass, but it's not that much of a pain in the ass. You can do it. If you got a zap flap underneath, that's the first question. Is the board just going up and down the box through a hole, or is the board going down through a fabric thing that stops it from moving or water turbing in there?
We don't actually know because we haven't had to have the water yet.
Yeah, we haven't had out of the water, so we
There's one.
don't know. Or is there a way to find out without bringing it out of the water?
Well,
We haven't had it long, so we haven't looked at it.
Yeah, sorry, we've only bought it last year, but yeah, and I'm sorry, it's been in the water. We're thinking about getting it out on the slip. We're at Flinders Island, so things are a bit limited here.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Draw a
but we're just wondering if it has got that slop in it, is that a problem or is it just
It should
something
be.
we can live with?
When it's pulled right, is it the slot more of a noise when you're sitting at anchor?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Because when you're sailing, it's just going to go clank to one side and stay there, more or less.
Yes. That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that in itself doesn't matter. But
No.
No.
but the zap flap, I don't know. I can easily draw it. I'll have a go.
We're just going to swap cameras over. Move it
Yeah.
under the
I'll
camera.
move it.
Robert.
Oh yeah, I'll do this. Okay. Well,
We're going to use this thing. I set it up.
I'm going to look at it now from the bow, looking backwards.
Finally, Paul.
I know. This took me so
That's
much brain
impressive.
power.
All of the budget assigned to this technology, we had to use
Right
it.
out the way. And it's coffee cup, the teacup out the way.
Okay.
Yeah, this budget.
Yeah.
And the masking tape. See the masking tape.
Yeah. So the boards. And you have here like that.
Those people that left earlier missing out.
Not on a hell of a lot. Now, can you see the drawing? Can you?
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, now that's looking at it from the end of the boat. This badly drawn here is the box. That's
Yep.
the box. And this piece here is a highly stylized version of the board. Now, you'll notice that either side of that board, you'll see these two things like, don't know how to describe them really, but you see that fabric there?
Get the cameras above it, right?
Oh yeah, the camera's above it.
Yeah. We can see that well. Yeah.
Now, this is one of my America's Cup connections. You think I'm joking? I'm not. The guy that made Australia 2 sails actually made your sail.
Ken O'Brien.
O'Brien.
And
Man
yours.
O'Brien, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
Ken.
He made Australia 2 sails.
Yeah.
Now, he said to me, what you need is a zap flap. And what it is, it's several layers. It's very stiff sail fabric, mylar, very stiff sail fabric, mylar, and it's about that wide.
No one can see you doing that. You've got to be under the camera if you're doing gestures.
Yeah, I do. Thanks, Paul.
That's right. Do you want me to go back up the...
I'm very illiterate. No, that's all right. No, that's all right. We can do this.
We're looking at your hands, Robert. So if you want to show how big it is or how thick it is, just do it with your hands.
You can see that. Okay, so it's about 80 mils wide.
Yeah.
Right.
And what you do, you have it set in. You have to make, or you don't have to make a trench, but you have 19 mil brass running down either side of the slot, and the 19 mil brass screws through the fabric and fix it to the bottom of the boat. Now this fabric is bloody stiff, and at first when you think about it, how the hell is it going to move through? But it does easily. And at the forward end, I'll just draw it like this, looking at it now from the top, or from the bottom really. At the forward end, the fabric is locked, both layers are locked by a brass plate there, so that they can't move. But at the aft end of the box, I'm doing this really badly. I'll do dots here. This is the aft end of the box here. The fabric overlaps and goes through like that. Each piece is overlapped. And so when you push the board through it, there's great tension on the fabric. And so it turns down and it makes the box very quiet while you're sailing as well. And the flaps go past the end of the box, so they don't tend to tuck back inside by about 150 mils. And my old boat had that fitted 20 years ago, and the fabric's still in perfect condition.
Gosh.
It quiets it to bilio, and it stops it from doing that.
Okay.
At anchor, it stops it doing that at anchor. Of course, once the board's wound up, it's inside of that, and so any movement of the water is restricted onto the board. And I
Very good.
carry rolls of it at home, and I can send you a pack. And this is a word from your sponsor. No, I can send you the brass strip, cut to size with holes in it, and what do you call it? Countersunk, and the bronze screws and the fabric, and you can have it on. You can have it on in about 4 hours. You can have it set up.
So what's the likelihood though that Philippe's boat has that flap on already?
I suspect it hasn't, by the virtue of what's happening.
Yeah.
You'll know when you look down in it, when the board's down. If you can see fabric there, then it's got it and it's worn out. But I'd be surprised if it was worn out.
Yeah.
If you open up the case, if you open up the top of the case, Jenny, can you look down into the case and you'll be able to see the water either side of the board, or if there's that flaps are there, obviously you'll only see the board.
We'll do a bit more investigation. Thanks. Yeah.
Jenny,
Thank you.
Jenny, I've got one fit. It doesn't make it quieter.
Oh, good.
The only thing is that the retraining metal strips, mine are stainless steel, and the screws keep corroding. So I was just wondering, it's held in with like a black sort of Sikaflex.
Yeah.
Can I just go, and I don't think it's going to come out. Can I just go over the top of that with some more black Sikaflex and keep it in place?
We did experiment with using stainless steel on a couple of them without knowing what we were doing. I have to admit, the brass never seems to die. It's good.
It's just the screws corrode and they snap and they're a nightmare to drill out.
And what were the screws? Were they stainless as well?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the thing. Bronze screws now, nothing seems to go wrong with them. Silicon bronze, yeah. So I could send you a care package which would do it.
Yeah,
that'd be cool. And photographs of it, set up and all of that. You'll see how it works. And it's I thank Ken O'Brien for many things, and the tragedy of it is he chose to depart, and we miss him enormously. Another one. But that was one of his really neat contributions. It was really good. So
thank you for that.
That's a pleasure. Any others that I can pretend to help with?
No other comments or questions?
There's something maybe Robert and Paul for a new session. I know it was kind of in the list of topics, which was about the kind of safety features and elements of the Sharpie design that contribute to the safety. I know you've sort of talked about that a bit in passing, but there was one person who couldn't join today who'd written me a question, which is all about the kind of self-writing abilities of Sharpies and centers of buoyancy, all that sort of stuff.
Do we leave this for?
I know you've got a lot that you could talk about that, Robert, including in the I've seen you do your slightly controversial talk at the AWBF once about the keels kill people and the ability to just pull up the board and float like a cork and stay stable and calm, and so that might be something worth introducing to another session in the future. I think might have a fair bit of interest.
I don't mind responding immediately if people have got the patience to put up.
The only thing is the next when we run, there's people who've left because it was meant to be over 15 minutes ago. So maybe we could save it and then put that as a lead up for the next one. If everyone's happy to do a next one, we want to go around again.
And also, you've got my email address, all of you, I think. Or if you haven't, maybe you will have.
Thank you.
I don't mind you shooting me emails and asking, because mostly I can either put you onto someone else who's got a boat who's dealt with the problem, or I can give you 7 possibilities, some of which will work.
What do you think, Peter? Do you want Robert to do a little bit more on that, or do you want to? I
mean, I don't want to call.
Well, it's not just for me, and I think as we've talked about before this, Paul, I think there's a quorum of people who, you know, for a lot of reasons, particularly to do with the time zone, our overseas friends in the US, for example, who couldn't join this session. It didn't make sense. So I think there would be interest in another session where some of those people may have totally different topics than have been raised by the people who joined this call. So
All
I
right.
think it would
all
be
right.
useful to do another session and
tackle that up front, the safety, because we looked at the range and, you know, features of it this time round. So maybe next time we could kick off with that.
Yeah, I'd be really happy to talk also about that's the safety stuff. The safety stuff about the boats is actually extraordinary. I've come to realise deeply that they're incredibly safe vessels.
And I guess the cautionary thing for people who want to be a bit adventurous and modify elements of the design and so on. I know that's something that does come up a little bit in the group, Robert, and that would be good to hear it from you and from that sort of experience of other owners as to, you know, why there's so deep thinking and basis for the design and all these safety elements in the Sharpies that you wouldn't really want to play around with too much.
Well, that sounds like a really good way to launch an evening, because it could just be on you know, those design features that make it safe and those sorts of things.
That's true.
That's brilliant.
Is everybody else happy with that? I'm happy to be guided by all of you, and I have to say I'm enormously relieved. I was nervous as buggery about this, and I don't know why I was, but afraid of the tech partly. And thanks, Paul. Thanks. Terrified, really. You know,
it's great. It's a very good system, isn't
Now
it?
you've done it, Robert. It's just going to be like
I love the two
easy as
cameras.
anything next time, anyway. So Paul's put a big effort, I know, into all of the technical setup and so on. So you're in good hands too.
It's like being in the movies. We've got people running around, dabbing my head, and doing all sorts of things off camera. You wouldn't believe what's going on.
Continuity people, I think, were falling down a bit during the whole session.
All right, then we'll wrap up. Thank you so much, everybody.
Yeah, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It
Thank
was
you.
Bye, everybody.
Lovely
very
to see you all.
informative. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was
Bye.
terrific. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Cheerio.
Yeah,
Goodbye.
Everyone.
See you, Peter. Bye, everyone.
Hey,
Thank
Peter,
you.
Yeah, Jenny.
Peter, thank
Bye.
See you,
Good to
Rick.
see
See
you.
you, everyone.
Good to see you.
Nice
See you,
work,
Paul.
Peter.
Yeah, see you.
Okay.
Bye.
All right.
you.
Bye.